All right, so let me ask you a quick question. How many of you know somebody that is a big complainer? If you're looking at the person next to you, shame on you. If you're the person being looked at, maybe you need to think about something for a moment, because people think you're a complainer. Complainers are no fun, are they?
No.
But how many of us have ever complained about something? All of us, all the time. I don't want to be a negative Nelly. Do you? Some of you didn't respond, so maybe you do. Maybe you know that you are. Maybe you know that that's something. Well, today, we're going to take a look at this experience that Paul had and the Philippians and how concerned they are about him. And we're going to try to see if we can learn something from Paul and something from this experience, because Paul just seems to be one of those guys. He turns negatives into positives. He sees setbacks as opportunities. He turns complaining, instead of complaining, he turns it into rejoicing. Because like Allison said, how many of you would have a super big smile on your face if you had to stay in prison? And the food is not good. And the beds, Taylor, put that picture up of the prison, because the beds look horrible. Right?
They look good.
That's a place to get a bed. Like, you gotta sleep on your side, but literally, it looks like it's up and down, doesn't it? You fall right out of that sucker.
Paul is a strong, tall man.
Anyway, so here's the thing. If we're going to be the kind of people that can rejoice in the midst of difficult circumstances, we're going to be the kind of people that can see setbacks as opportunities, that can turn negatives into positives. I think we can learn a lot from Paul, because if you can be in prison with a smile on your face and sleep in that kind of bed and be happy about it, you can do anything. And don't we want to be the kind of people that do anything?
Yep.
Don't we want to be the kind of people that can bring joy to any circumstance?
Totally.
Yes, Reese, I love you. Totally. We want to be those kinds of people. So if you have your Bibles, open them up. Parents, I highly recommend that during this time when your children are here, and show them the paper Bible, teach them how to use that. So it's a great opportunity. The way that the Bible's designed, just a quick history lesson, is it's actually broken up 4 different reasons. This is a graphic of that. If you'd like a copy of this, I can send it to you, or you can just Google it and find it. That's what I did, and I stole the image right off of Google. So in the New Testament, over here, there's 27 books in the New Testament. Philippians is one of Paul's letters, and it's about towards the end of your Bible. So find it there. Philippians chapter 1 is where we are at. We're going to pick right up where Jack left off last Sunday. Great job, by the way, Jack. If you haven't seen that message, go onto our Facebook page. You can link to it in Google, YouTube, and find it there. But the Philippians were concerned about Paul, and Paul's writing to, remember the Philippians church was like really good friends. And so he's writing to them out of love and concern and encouragement and all of these different reasons. So Philippians chapter 1 verse 12 is where we're picking up today. And this is what he says. Remember last week he kind of introduced these great concepts of he's praying for them, he's encouraged by them. He says, be convicted about something and be faithful and fruitful. That was Jack's message in a nutshell, but that was based on what Paul was telling the Philippians. So today he's continuing this letter to them, and he's kind of moving into some of the things that they were concerned about. So look at this. He says in verse 12, now, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. You guys know what the gospel is?
No.
Allison presented the gospel just a minute ago. The gospel is the message of Jesus, the good news that God said human beings need help. I'm going to send my son. He's going to live the perfect life that they're not able to live. And he's going to pay the penalty for our imperfect lives that we couldn't afford to pay. And because of that, because of what Jesus did on the cross, we can live his life before God. Because he took our sins to God and paid the penalty for them. That's the gospel. The good news of Jesus is he did something for us we could never do for ourselves. Ever. And God did it because he loved us. That's the gospel. So what Paul is saying to the Philippians who were concerned about what was going on, they saw his imprisonment as this huge setback. I mean, imagine if your job was to go and tell people something, And then all of a sudden you got arrested for telling people that something, and you got thrown in jail. Wouldn't everybody go, that's not good. How is he going to do his job then? And so the Philippians were concerned, and they were concerned that Paul was going to be discouraged. Because from what I understand about Paul, like he's a type A go-getter. You put the guy in prison, he's not going to be happy, because he wants to go out and do stuff. But what he's saying to them is, what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. You know what it means to advance? Move forward, right?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, you should have. You were right. Moving forward. That is what advance means. But did you know that it actually comes from a Greek word that means pro-cutter? And I can't pronounce the Greek word, so I'm just going to say cutter, and you guys can go look it up and learn it on your own. But it means to move forward. And cutter sounds like cutting, doesn't it? And so what they actually used this word for was troops that were out in like a wilderness type of place that were actually having to cut things out of the way to advance their military and their armies towards something. So they would have to move out fallen trees, they would have to use machetes to cut out the path. All of that was kind of in this word, advance. Yeah, kind of interesting. The gospel message, the good news of Jesus Christ, is not advanced easily. Spoiler alert. Like if you think that your faith should transfer easily into this world, that word alone should help us see that it's going to take effort, it's not going to happen without some intentionality, and it may produce calluses or blisters as it moves forward. Now, not literally, but it might be hard, guys. And that's okay. You don't want to be part of something that's easy. You think you do, but you really don't. Like if there's not work, if there's not effort, then when you get there, you're going to be disappointed, because if you don't have to expend any energy to make it happen, anybody can do it, and then you're just like everybody else, and who wants to be like everybody else? The gospel takes work to advance. That's why Paul put it in there. He said, what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. He's saying being in prison, that's why he's smiling. Being in prison is helping the message of Jesus get to places it wouldn't have gotten to had I not been put in prison. Watch this, verse 13. He says, as a result, he's explaining how it's advancing. It has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and everyone else that I'm in chains for Christ. I love this. Everybody thinks that Paul is captive. But what Paul is saying is that everybody else is captive to me. They are stuck having to listen to what I am going to say, and it's become clear throughout the whole palace guard. Now, just so we understand, like, this is one of the supreme elite guards in Rome. This was, as Paul is advancing in his trials, that it's moving up to higher courts, and this is called the Praetorian Guard. They don't know exactly where this letter was written, from what guard station it was, but these guards were the elite of the elite. So what I want you to think of is Secret Service. The Secret Service are guarding Paul. These were the ones that would have reported straight to Caesar. They were responsible for keeping Caesar safe. These were the ones behind the walls, not out in the general population. Okay? These are the cream of the crop, your special forces of guards. And because Paul's saying, these guys, these palace guard, and everyone else, it says in verse 13, that I am in chains for and with, knows about Jesus. Every one of them knows about Jesus. Verse 14, and because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. Paul is saying, I had freedom. I could go wherever I wanted to go. I could do whatever I wanted to do. I was on a message. Blues Brothers just came into my mind. We're on a mission from God. Some of you will not get that reference. Others of you will. You're welcome. So, he's on this mission from God, unfettered, able to go and say whatever he wants to do for the most part. I mean, sometimes he's trying to go places God says, you can't go there. But every place else he's allowed to go. But yet he's saying that because of what's happened here, good things, my freedom may be limited, but the gospel is not limited. It is not limited. It can go anywhere. But right now, because of my imprisonment, he says in verse 14, because of my chains, most of the brothers and sisters have become confident in the Lord and dare all the more to proclaim the gospel without fear. He's already said it's good for me to be in prison because the guards are starting to hear. And now he's saying, and because of my chains, because of my imprisonment, my brothers and sisters who believe the way that I believe are now speaking more boldly. The word without fear means literally abundantly more bold. So not just a little bold, if there is such a thing, but abundantly more bold, which means more and more and more and more and more bold. They were speaking more boldly, more, should I say it one more time? You guys get it? Thank you. Love it. We're going to learn a lot from the kids being in here, I think. Right? It's good stuff. Good stuff. So, the guards are learning about Jesus, and people that believe in Jesus are proclaiming Jesus even more than before. Think about that for a second. If we're thinking about not being complainers and instead being rejoicers, if we're thinking about not seeing things as setbacks but instead seeing them as opportunities, if we're thinking about this changed mindset that changes everything, when we're thinking about that kind of stuff, like what Paul is saying here makes a lot of sense, but how do people change? What caused the difference between people outside preaching more and more and more and more and more abundantly, boldly, and not doing that? I'm glad you asked. It's his example to them under pressure. There should be a difference, folks, between how a Christ follower behaves under pressure and somebody that doesn't have the hope of Jesus behaves under pressure. There should be a difference. And when we're behaving under pressure in such a way that our actions and attitudes convey this idea that we have hope that's unshakable in Jesus no matter the circumstance, their lives will change too. So they're watching Paul in prison, they're watching how he's reacting, they're watching what he's saying, and because of his actions, they're becoming more and more and more bold. He's an inspiration to them, and you can be an inspiration to people around you too. Amen. I have a note here that says your demeanor and your attitude and your actions during times of stress and pressure are often a source of great encouragement to others. Some might say that when you go through difficult times, others are encouraged. If that's the case, then you should rejoice in your sufferings. See the connection there? Verse 15, we got to keep going. We got a lot to cover. Well, maybe. Verse 15. It is true that some people out there are preaching Christ out of envy and rivalry, and others out of goodwill. Wait, what? You mean believers aren't getting along? How in the world? Shouldn't they know better? Yeah, they should. But you know what? People are human. People aren't perfect. We all need Jesus. So did they. So did they. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying this happens. That's why we're looking forward to heaven. It's true, he says, that some people are preaching Christ out of envy, and some are preaching it out of rivalry, and others out of goodwill. Verse 16 says, the latter do so out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The people that are encouraging and supportive are doing it out of love because they know Paul, they love Paul's message, and they love the God that Paul serves. And so they're trying to be more and more abundantly bold. Remember, spreading the gospel message as far as they can. But he says, the former, that's the ones that are envious and rivalry-ish, rivalrous, I don't know. Looking at April, she's my wordsmith. She doesn't know either. She's already moved on. The former, it says, preach Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, supposing that they can stir up trouble for me while I am in chains. I'm sure none of you have a friend as mean as one that would stir up trouble for you or talk badly about you when you're not looking, do you?
No.
Sometimes that happens, doesn't it? That's hard when it happens.
Yeah.
All have the same thing happen. But the good news is there's two types of people that he has. One are super supportive, and they're admirers of Paul, and they're like, he is on the right track, doing the right thing in prison for the wrong reasons. But he is great. Jesus is great. Let's support him and let's help him out. But what we know about the other ones that aren't that way, the envious and the rivals, they're jealous of Paul. Why? Because remember, there was a church in Rome already. Paul was being taken to Rome to defend his faith, and he was charged legally so that he had to do that.
He's under investigation.
He was. He was already, there was already a church in Rome. So here comes this really famous guy into Rome, and if you're not a secure preacher, guess what? You don't want that guy around. You don't want him around. You're like, we were here first. We don't need everybody following Paul now. Just stay in our church. He's a bad guy. And so don't listen to him. Watch what Paul does. Verse 18. Verse 18 says, but what does it matter? See, Paul has such clear focus. He says, it doesn't matter if I'm being opposed from inside or outside the church. I am choosing not to be provoked into a battle with these people because, he says, the important thing, the second part of verse 18, is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached. Jesus is proclaimed. Whether they like me or not, it doesn't matter. They're teaching about Jesus. He gets the glory. He gets the fame. He gets the honor. And I am fine with that. Isn't that cool? You ever found yourself in a situation where you have to just determine not to let somebody's words bother you? That's what Paul's feeling. Because you're going to have supporters and you're going to have people that don't like it. He says, I'm not going to let them provoke me. And either way, Christ is preached. You guys are off the hook. Because you don't have to preach Christ. I mean, you're not preachers, right? You don't prepare a message and come sit before this church every Sunday, Sunday in, Sunday out, and try to teach people what's going on about, so you don't have to worry about it. I mean, he says right there, Christ is preached. You ready? You can tell. You can tell. I'm kind of drawing you in here, aren't I? I'm setting something up so that y'all are like, and then I'm going to get you, aren't I? Yeah, here it is. The word for preached isn't what I'm doing right now. That's not the word. The word for preach is literally speaking in conversations. Normal, everyday conversations. As you live your life speaking in normal, everyday conversations, literally, as you talk to people. So you're not off the hook, are you?
No.
You guys probably have normal, everyday conversations every day, right? That's what makes you normal.
Yeah, I have a conversation with somebody.
You have I'm sure that there are times when the conversation just goes on for hours and hours and hours. I love the reason. Yeah.
For me, conversations go on for like forever.
Forever. And they should. And that's what Paul is saying. In our normal speaking with people, guess what? We should be proclaiming the good news of Jesus. Let's keep going here. And he says, because of this, I rejoice and will continue to rejoice. Why? Because Paul knows that when Jesus is talked about, lives are transformed when we see the difference that Jesus makes in our lives. We cannot stay the same. And when we have the hope of knowing that no matter what happens in this life, good or bad, we have the next life to look forward to. We're going to talk about that next week. Don't miss out. It's going to be great. Nothing can stop us from having solid hope and rejoicing no matter what is happening. No matter what's happening. So he says, as long as Jesus is talked about, I will rejoice. When people are talking about Jesus, I will rejoice. I get the opportunity to talk about Jesus, I am rejoicing. So what does Paul say about his setback? He says, guys, you consider it a setback, I consider it an advantage. Because of what's happening to me right now, the gospel is advancing. How? He says, look, the whole guard knows. These elite special service soldiers that he is chained to every day. He's got 4 different guards that he's chained to for part of the day. Do you think that guard got sick and tired of Paul talking about Jesus? I guarantee the guy did. But I'm sure at some point he's like, I think he might be onto something. 4 times a day, Paul would get a new guard, which means every 6 hours he had somebody new to talk to about Jesus. This guard gets to know Paul intimately. He's chained to them. Think about everything that you do throughout your day if you're chained to somebody. Like brushing your teeth, chained to... Like, that guy's like, okay, finish brushing. Right? Sneezing. Tying your shoe. Like everything that you do. Paul says, rejoice, guys, because I am having opportunity to share the gospel in ways that I never would have before had my freedom not been limited. If it wasn't for my confinement, these people wouldn't be hearing about Jesus. So that's a great thing. You know what else he was excited about? At the end of Philippians, if you want to read ahead, I think chapter 4, verse 22 or something. He says, I and many others from Caesar's household send you greetings. So the entire court system is being disrupted by this man. They are having, at the official level, at the top end, they're having to examine this Christian sect to determine its legitimacy and whether the government of Rome is going to allow it or not. So they have all of these lawyers and all of these officials studying the Word of God and the accounts of Jesus every day at the highest level. So he says, guys, the gospel's advancing. It's not easy work, but it's advancing. The guards know. The officials are knowing. And you know what else? And there's a zeal and a boldness happening in regular old believers, and they are sharing ways in ways that we never thought would happen before. This whole thing is in an uprising. This whole thing. And folks, he's asking us to do the same thing. So what has he done? Shouldn't we know? If we're going to turn our complaining into rejoicing, if we're going to turn setbacks into opportunities, if we're going to change the way we look at things and go, if Paul can be in prison and be excited about it, then in my own life, when I'm faced with challenge or opposition or difficulty, what do I need to know? Yeah, let's look. He did 3 things. Every day, everyone, and every situation. Watch this. He said, preach God's message in your spoken and in everyday conversation. In your everyday conversation, in your everyday conversation, in your everyday conversation, you should be talking and sharing about what Jesus has done for you. And if he hasn't done anything for you, we're just going to assume that you're early into this. And we're going to trust that you will learn more and more and more about Jesus as you look at God's Word and you come to this church. But in your everyday conversation, he says, I want you talking about me. That's what Paul did. Your everyday conversation. Every day, Paul was sharing about Jesus. Every day. Is that easy? I mean, Allison asked us that question earlier. How many of you have shared Jesus recently? How many of you have shared Jesus at all? I had an encounter that convicted me 2 weeks ago like I haven't been convicted in a while. We're dropping our car off to be fixed. And one of the mechanics was out in front of the tire shop that my father-in-law owns. And this particular mechanic had seen my father-in-law recently, who's had some more severe health issues and some setbacks. And we're having this conversation. I heard you got to see George. He's like, yeah, I did, it was really cool. He looks pretty good considering. And I was like, yeah, it's great. He said, I just told him every day above ground's better than one below. And immediately my mind went, you are so wrong. You are so wrong. Because I know where my hope is. And I know that heaven is way better than the best day on earth, than the best life on earth. We're going to talk more about that next week. And so all of a sudden, my mind is I'm not going to do it here because it would hurt everybody's ears. My mind is screaming, no, at the top of its lungs. And my mouth stopped, cold in its tracks. So my mind is like, I need to tell him, that's not true, that's not right, there's no way. And he's been to our church a couple of times way back when. I hope that this guy knows Jesus, but I don't think he is, because you don't talk like that if you do. I mean, this is all going through your mind. And instead of me saying, you're wrong, let's talk about it. I didn't. I drove off. He's like, haha. And came home. And it has bothered me ever since. See, Paul wouldn't have allowed that moment to pass without saying to him. That doesn't mean that we're all going to encounter moments like that, but here's what it does mean. Are we going to ask God to give us more and more boldness so that we're abundantly bold in our conversations and in our day? Because until we're willing to ask Him to do that, and until we're willing to step into those moments and do something, we're not acting like Paul. And God is an honor. He says, every day speak boldly of your confidence in Jesus Christ to everyone. To everyone. There wasn't one person in Paul's life that didn't walk away from an encounter with him going, I know Jesus better now. I promise you, not one person. I know Jesus better. They might have chosen to reject his message altogether, but Paul understood Jesus like nobody else. Not one person could have encountered Paul without hearing about Jesus. So everyone that he came in contact with knew. Does everyone know in your life that you believe in Jesus? Because it should be creating a difference in your life. If it's not, then I would ask you to go before Jesus and say, I need some help. Because you really haven't changed my life. Either I haven't let you, or I haven't invited you in yet. But you can't encounter Jesus and stay the same. He changes you. Every day, guys. Everyone that we come in contact with. And I don't expect it to be easy. Because Paul doesn't use words unintentionally. If he says that the gospel message is advancing with much pain, hardship, suffering, if he's using this word that says, man, we're having to cut and clear this path out, and it's tough. If he's using those words, I mean, he's standing in jail smiling, but he also knows it ain't easy. It ain't easy. Everyone should know, but it isn't easy. We should pray for perseverance, and we should pray for boldness. Have you ever noticed that throughout the gospel accounts, anytime one of the disciples is thrown in jail for something and then finally released for whatever reason, they don't pray for safety. Keep me safe, Jesus. No, they pray for what? which is the opposite of safety. The more bold you are, the more of a target you create on yourself. Everyone needs to know, because they only have one life, and what they do with this life determines where they spend eternity. It matters. Thirdly, in every situation, leave an impression for Jesus. Favorable, preferably. I have to say that. You know why? Because the past few weeks I've been listening, and I do that a lot, and a couple of times, one of my kids who works in retail will come to me and say, yeah, so-and-so came in, a pastor in town, and they were an absolute jerk. And I'm like, come on. And it's not one person, and it's not one place. It's like several of them. A lot of my kids worked in retail, or are working in retail. You know, one of them says, pastors don't tip well. Well, why not? I mean, I get that pastors don't make a ton of money. I get that. But pastors have been shown incredible generosity from this God, right? So shouldn't we therefore be generous with the people that we encounter? Absolutely. Pastors should be the last one arguing with the store clerk about whether something was in good shape before they bought it or not, and creating a scene where other people on their little headsets are like, that's my pastor. So yeah, we laugh about it. Like, leave a favorable impression. Always leave a favorable impression, folks. Always, because you never know who's watching. Now, I'm not saying that so that we act like these well-reformed kind of Christians that know the rules and stay away from... No, I'm saying this because people will shape sometimes. Listen, the only Jesus they know is the one that they see in you. Paul knew that. And because of the way Paul was acting in prison, people were emboldened to speak about Jesus. So every day, everyone, but listen, every situation, whether you feel like it or not, we should leave a favorable impression of Jesus. Every time. Now, the last thing that Paul knows about this is if we want a changed mind about situations so that we look at setbacks as opportunities, as negative things, as potential for positives, as disasters or possibilities, and complaining is turned into rejoicing. What did Paul know that we don't know? That there are no accidents with God. That there are no accidents with God. Sometimes we look at our circumstances and we say, well, God must hate me. God made a mistake. God's not paying attention. God doesn't like me very much. I'm not doing good enough for God to get these blessings. And that is the wrong thing. The Philippians were saying, Paul, are you okay? Paul, are you okay? Paul, is everything okay? They're writing to him saying, help us know whether everything's okay. And he said, guys, God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. God's not overlooking anything. God's not angry for not following Him. God's not putting me in this position because I've done something wrong. No, quite the opposite. God is using this to advance Him. God is using my circumstances, this situation, this difficulty, this struggle, this suffering to advance His notoriety, to advance His name. There are no accidents with God, guys. And if that's true for Paul, that's true for you and me. So no matter what situation you find yourself in, no matter what, you can count on one thing. God is using it to advance Him. It might be hard on you, but you know what? It's hard on His Son. That wasn't easy. If He's willing to do that with His Son Jesus, then you might be willing to put us in some pretty uncomfortable situations too, don't you think? In every situation, as we begin to see that God is using it for His glory, we can smile in prison. We can make sicknesses our opportunity to share with Jesus and with people with Jesus. We can make love our code of ethics. We can walk through life kind of spreading His word and His way around. And will it be easy? No. No, it's not going to be easy. But it will be worth it. Let's pray.